From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Got sleepy Saturday morning where maybe Penn State starts waking up in the middle of the second quarter. No, I know Penn State's a great team. They're going to win by 3 or 4 scores in this one. But that's just the feel that I have, especially Northwestern, carrying some momentum after that win against Minnesota. What say you about this matchup?
Well, there's that part of it. Northwestern coming off that dramatic, they were down 31-10, come back and win. They get to stay home this week. There's the fact that Penn State's coming off the whiteout. And I don't know, maybe in Evanston on Saturday, there's a 30-mile-per-hour wind like there was with the Ohio State game last year. And it's just impossible to throw the ball. But, that Ohio State team last year is a little bit more built on the pass than, this offense with Singleton and Allen and that offensive line for Penn State.
Penn State has yet to really have – they've had methodical rushing performances. I think you've yet to see those big explosive runs from Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. This seems like as good a time as any to be able to see that. We know Drew Allar can do. I think we've proven that he's one of the best quarterbacks in this conference. But you think that maybe this is a game where Penn State is really going to lean on the run game, try to get that going a little bit more, maybe against this defense that last week gave up nearly 200 yards to Darius Taylor on the ground.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where my mind was going was Minnesota was in a place, especially in the second half, where honestly, I think they got a little bit conservative, could have thrown it a little bit more with Ethan Kaliak-Manis, but Darius Taylor's proven to be a horse since week 2, and at times it didn't look like Northwestern could stop him from watching the tape back. So, yeah, I do think this is a big Allen and Singleton game where Penn State gets a lead and then they try to bleed some clock in the second half and try to run away with it.
You got 2 teams that are coming off bad weeks. This is an Iowa team who was announced, once again, going to be down Caleb Johnson. Once again, going to be down Jazz Patterson. You're down to RB3 in LaShawn Williams. Cade McNamara still looks a little bit banged up. No Luke Lachey. Kirk Ferentz this week saying, yeah, maybe we should throw it to the receivers a little bit more. What a novel concept. This whole thing, okay, I know Iowa on paper seems like they should get a win by a couple of scores. And it's at Kinnick and it's at night, which put those 2 things together and it makes it even more difficult. How do you see this one going down? Because I could see this one, if Michigan State takes care of the football and they don't turn it over like they did against Maryland, this could maybe be a rock fight of sorts where you could see a low-scoring game maybe coming down to the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I'm with you on a couple of those. I do think Iowa will pull away and win this game in the end comfortably, but I think early it could be close. Harlan Barnett has said, even though they played 3 quarterbacks last week, Michigan State starter is going to be Noah Kim. So, he had moments in that first half. I was telling you earlier, I'm still working through some of the tape on that game, but about halfway through it, Noah Kim did some things where you're like, I can see why guys would want to follow him. He's not the biggest dude, but some of the quarterback run stuff, he's taken on Ruben Hippolyte. He's taking on Jayshon Barham. 2 of the more physical linebackers, two of the more physical players that Maryland has, and talking a little mess to him after also. So, I don't know if this is the week you necessarily want to go into a game not fully committed to who your quarterback is, but it sounds like Michigan State is in that place with Noah Kim, even though they didn't prove that by playing 3 guys last Saturday. But I think Iowa offensively, they were embarrassed by the 4 first down Saturday that it was last week. I think Cade McNamara will bounce back, and I think they get Michigan State while they're down.
Somebody's got to protect the football, right? You got Illinois -6 turnover margin this season, Purdue -2, and they've combined for 17 turnovers total. So who's going to protect the football, and how do you see this one going down? Because for me, I see a Purdue team That's weak on defense. And Ryan Walters, I think he's going to get there eventually, but right now injuries have kind of contributed to what's going on. But Purdue is kind of struggling a little bit right now. Illinois kind of has their own struggles a little bit. I think both of these teams may be playing outside of their comfort zone and what they want to be from a philosophy standpoint. How do you see this one going on? I think it could get pretty crazy.
Yeah, the turnover number is interesting. And Illinois' start to the season, they survived Toledo, and then the Kansas debacle. Really, really surprised to see how highly penalized they were to start the season, and have been. And I lost count of the turnover number. I think it was at 4 picks for Luke Altmyer, Illinois' quarterback against Penn State. Three or four turnovers.
Yes.
He protected the ball a little bit better. They were playing FAU this weekend, but it's the case for a lot of teams. But I think specifically with Illinois, they go as Luke Altmyer goes, which is really, really interesting because they had such a good run game and such a good defense last year. So it's kind of a flip of what you expect with an Illinois team. But you turn over that whole secondary. Chase Brown, not with you anymore, one of the top rushers in the country last year. But Altmyer's had some moments where he looks like one of the top quarterbacks in the Big Ten, but he throws the ball to the other team too much, and they get flagged too much. So that's kind of a wild card to me in the Big Ten West, going back to our original conversation about Wisconsin and Iowa, is if Luke Altmyer gets hot, I mean, they could have one of those on the verge type seasons of going to Indy like last year. I know a lot of Illinois fans have been disappointed about how it started, but that's still out in front of you, and it starts with this game against Purdue.
There's a possibility that this could maybe be a look-ahead game for the Terps, right? It was already scheduled. Big noon Saturday on Fox a couple of weeks from now when they face Ohio State. So you got to stay focused on Indiana. In your early preparation, how are you kind of breaking this one down right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the emotional part of it for Indiana is really fascinating, and that's kind of what I'm curious to get to the bottom of with Tom Allen and the coaches tomorrow for Indiana when we meet with them. Is they won in 4 overtimes. It was ugly, and they were right on the brink of a really devastating loss to a MAC team that barely survived an FCS team a couple weeks before. It was a missed field goal for people that missed the game. It was a missed field goal by Akron as time expired that sent the game to overtime. Chip shot from straight on. And, it was seeing some of the behind the scenes video. It looked like a pretty somber locker room. So there was kind of that mix of, yes, we won. Yeah. So I'm very curious if, will Indiana kind of go into their shell and make that was not an intended pun, by the way. I just realized as soon as it came out of the mouth, going to Maryland. But will they kind of go into a shell and turn that into kind of an emotionally flat performance the next week, or are they motivated by it? Because look, Indiana against Ohio State, they had some really good moments. Against Louisville in the second half, it didn't look like Jeff Brom's offense was going to be able to move the ball at all at some points until they closed it on the final drive. I'm curious to find out, was that just one bad night, or is there something deeper that needs to be fixed with Indiana for them to get back to that evergreen question the past couple of years for Indiana fans, to get back to the level that they were at in 2020 when they were one of the Big Ten and the nation's best stories.
Maryland is a team that I think is very good. If you would have put them in the Big Ten West the last few years, they would have been right towards the top. They would have been right there in contention with some of those other teams. Sometimes I think Taulia Tagovailoa and that team can be a little bit inconsistent, right? You look at this last game against Michigan State, they get out to a big 21-0 lead, and then they get kind of stagnant a little bit, and then eventually the turnovers kind of help them out, put more points up on the board. What's the key for Maryland? What's something you're looking forward to talking to Coach Loxley about in your preparation for this broadcast? Yeah,
I mean, the Tagovailoa thing is always front and center. I really like Corey Dyches, who's a listed tight end for them, and he lines up attached to the formation for them sometimes offensively, but they split him out wide like a wide receiver. I did their spring game, I think 2 years ago, and he was still kind of a hidden gem at that point. And I remember watching tape. I think it was Matt McGloin who did the spring game with me that year, and we were watching tape before the spring game, and we were both kind of looking at each other like, who is this wide receiver that's not listed on the depth chart as a wide receiver? And it was Corey Dyches, guy with a basketball background, guy that's really become a big part of their offense. Really like him. I mentioned the linebackers before, Hippolyte and Jayshon Barham. Those guys really fly around. Getting Bo Braid back and him being involved in turnovers this week was big for their defense. But I really want to see how well they run the ball against Indiana's defense. Hoosiers haven't been great stopping the run. We know Maryland can chuck the ball around the yard with Tagovailoa and Dyches and those receivers, but I'd like to see from Maryland's offense. We saw it from Colby McDonald a little bit in the Virginia and the Charlotte games before Michigan State, some explosive run plays. But outside of Tagovailoa running around a little bit, and then there was a fake punt in that Michigan State game, you take those couple of plays out of it, and the running numbers weren't terrific against Michigan State, and that was a game that Maryland played with a lead the entire time. So you figure that's second half, offense sputtered a couple of times. You figure that should be, let's do some downhill running, maybe get Antoine Littleton involved, their bigger back. But it wasn't always as easy as I thought it might be in the run game last Saturday.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.